Hypothetically, your Chiron return is one of the most important transits for you to note that wraps up a 50-year cycle. So in this video, I want to give you a quick and complete rundown of what it means to have your Chiron return and how you can navigate this potentially challenging energy. Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Isabel, your spiritual rebel friend, and today we are doing a quick overview in depth of what your Chiron return means and what a Chiron return is in the first place, because this is probably, from experience with clients, one of the most important returns and transits to note that oftentimes can feel like we're having a big life crisis. And so in this video today specifically, I'm going to cover what Chiron is, what a Chiron return is, how to navigate a Chiron return effectively, and any additional tips for practically applying this knowledge. So if you are someone who is nearing your Chiron return, if you feel like you've been going through a hard phase and you're around your 50s, this video very much applies to you. And if you're just someone who wants to take in the information of astrology and learn what a Chiron return is all about, let's dive in. But before we do, be sure to book a reading in the link in the description below, where in 1 hour we can dive deep into any and everything about your chart, including your Chiron placement, both the sign it's in as well as the house. If you want to learn how to navigate your Chiron return with ease, if you're wanting to learn more about your chart, if you want to know what else is going on in your chart and what is activated during the current transits, these readings are for you. Sky's the limit. Learn more down below. First and foremost, let's quickly recap what is Chiron. I have an old video where I talk about what Chiron is as a general planet, and I want to recap what Chiron is all about before we get into a Chiron return. If you already know all about Chiron and you feel like you have a deep understanding of this asteroid, then skip this section by going to the timestamps in the description box below. So first and foremost, what is Chiron? Chiron is not a planet, it is an asteroid that we can find in our birth chart. And it'll look like a circle with a K on it, or how I see it, it's a key, which is the key to healing. Chiron is known as the wounded healer. And what it represents, simply put, is the wounds that we heal in others but don't heal in ourselves. You can imagine with the story of Chiron, this idea of almost a medic on a battlefield who is going around tending to others' wounds while they're at the same time have their own wounds that are causing them to bleed out, but they're not taking care of it. And so whatever sign Chiron is in our chart represents that wound we go about healing in others and tending to, but we are not healing within ourselves. The sign that your Chiron is in specifically tells you what archetype you have wounds associated with. So for example, if someone's Chiron was in Cancer, maybe they feel wounds associated with being nurtured. However, they seem to be the most nurturing people you know. So Chiron, at its root in many ways, this idea of having this wound that we heal in others but not ourselves has a lot to do with worthiness. It tells us what we feel we are unworthy of giving ourselves, and yet at the same time we tell everyone else that they are worthy of. So working through your Chiron, understanding the sign your Chiron is in, as well as the house, tells you what the wounds are that you heal in others but not in yourself, and can also tell you what worthiness blockages may keep you limited. By not healing your Chiron, this could play out as feeling an emotional sense of woundedness. This could cause projecting our emotions onto others. This can cause us, simply put, because we're not feeling worthy, to become a blocker for our manifestations. So if you feel like there's certain manifestations that you've been working towards that haven't been coming through, it is possible it's because your Chiron wound that is causing unworthiness has not been fully healed. But given that it is something we heal in others, in many ways, Chiron can be a gift to the world. It is something that you can help others heal, truly. But we can only do so and truly do our best healing work when, of course, we heal that within ourselves. After all, a medic bleeding out on the battlefield trying to tend to others' wounds is eventually going to find that they have to take care of themselves in order to continue to heal others. Now, what does a Chiron return specifically mean? Simply put, we have returns of our planets and points in our chart often because it goes around the zodiac wheel. We have a solar return once a year on our birthday. We have a lunar return, a moon return every 28 days. We have our Mercury return, and we have our Saturn return, which is well known in astrology. And for those who are astrologers or aspiring astrologer goers, I suppose, that gets a huge reputation for happening every 30 years. In a way, Chiron return, I don't hear people talk about enough, but in at least the human design world, a Chiron return is very accentuated, especially for those who have a 6-2 profile. Let me know if you have that down below. And so if you have this 6-2 profile, I would recommend looking into your Chiron return especially. But what is exactly a Chiron return? Why is this so important? And why does human design emphasize as well the Chiron return? In my understanding, based off of Chiron being the wounded healer, that has a lot to do with worthiness. And in the end, being able to heal our self-worth wounds to better heal humanity. Chiron return is entering a new evolutionary phase of wisdom by understanding what this wound truly means. Given that Chiron is the asteroid of something we are ashamed of, wounded about, something that is hard for us to heal, this can really represent finally healing something that's taken us half of our lifetime, hypothetically, to heal. Or some of us, most of our lifetime, since this happens roughly around 50 years of age. It depends exactly when you're born, and with all the retrogrades that Chiron does, this can be affected slightly, but roughly around 50 years, that is when you have your Chiron return. Chiron returns to the point it was at your moment of birth, both the sign and the house. And so this means that you are returning to the themes of your birth, returning to wholeness, and entering a new evolutionary cycle around how you heal wounds. Having your Chiron return, in my interpretation, the main goal here is to help you be a healer, to help you heal other people, and to reach a level of wholeness with this wound with yourself so that you can heal others. Now, that's the root theme. The root theme, it seems, of Chiron return is so that you can be a healer and you can feel a sense of sense of healing around your wounds. But alongside with that, there's some common themes that I notice come up for people who are having a Chiron return. One of which is it feels like your life is falling apart or you have a crisis. How I would interpret this is based off of experience with clients. I've had a lot of clients over the last 3 months who are having their Chiron return, had their Chiron return, or in the process of their Chiron return with their Chiron in Aries. And if you want to know if you have a Chiron in Aries, check out my video covering Chiron in Aries where I provide the dates for that specifically. But what I've noticed for these people is it feels like there is going on in their life that they can no longer put up with. There is this feeling of this mode of working is no longer working for me. How I would emphasize this further with a Chiron return, not only is there an emphasis on things no longer working for you, but connecting that back to the idea of how I usually explain Chiron being this medic in a battlefield. It feels like you're getting to a breaking point. Your wound is bleeding out. You're getting lightheaded. You're asking yourself, can I even do more healing work unless I change something? So a Chiron return is really bringing to light our wound, activating our wound so that we can actually put an emphasis on bandaging it up. And so hence why while a Chiron return can be a new beginning, it also requires completing and closing out a cycle by making us aware of our wounds. So noting the sign that your Chiron is in is going to help you understand in better detail what exactly it means to have this Chiron return, because those are the wounds that are going to be resurfacing for you that feel like they can't be ignored any longer. On top of it as well, Chiron, because it represents worth, and our worth is reflected in all we do, this can often bring a cascading chaos sometimes to our life based off of experience. This is not to predict or fortune tell or say that your life is destined to fall apart if you're having your Chiron return. This is just based off of what I've noticed for my clientele. They feel like their life is falling apart as a result of an unworthiness wound they have not tended to the degree they need to tend to it. I feel like I said that sentence very cohesively, and I hope it really settled with you guys well, because this is truly the theme here with a Chiron return. Chiron is our wound, and when we have Chiron returning to where it was the moment we were born, this wound is brought to light for the sake of healing. It hits its peak, it hits its culmination point that it's been reaching for the last 50 years. You've had a settling effect, so to say. You were born with the wound, ingrained with it, so to say, at your moment of birth. And then Chiron left the sign eventually to say, let's give you a break. Try to work on this, but we're not pressuring it. But when we hit roughly the age of 50, Chiron returns to say, have you tended to this? Now's the time you need to, or else you cannot enter your next healing phase. Really what Chiron represents as being the wounded healer is this idea that we are all meant to be healers. Especially when we hit around the age of 50, we can really do our most devoted healing work, but we can only do that from a place of worthiness. And so for that reason, to tie and complete my thought there a little bit better, oftentimes I notice for those who have a Chiron return, because this is our wound and our worthiness, they often can feel that their life is falling apart in some means to bring to light the wounds around worthiness that they need to heal on a specific topic. To put it into relevant terms, let's say it's for a Chiron in Aries, healing wounds around how worthy of independence you are, how worthy of individuality you are, how worthy you are of assertion. It feels like this wound is reaching a culmination point. It's very prevalent. It is brought to light. It feels like a softer, more sensitive spot because you are now at a turning point where you can heal this. So a Chiron return is an invitation to heal, but it also can bring a sense of crisis because the pain is getting worse. That would be another way I would describe it, is imagine if we're going on the idea of a wounded healer. Imagine a wounded healer on a battlefield. The moment you gain the wound, so to say, the healer gets the wound the moment you're born and takes some painkillers to distract themselves, maybe slap a Band-Aid on it, even though it's not gonna suffice in the long run, so that they can go about healing others in the first 50 years of life. And then when we have our Chiron return, it's like that the painkillers are wearing off and the bandage is no longer doing its job. It needs to be repaired. A Chiron return represents a turning point for healing, a turning point that says, now the pain's gonna be brought to light so that you can actually focus on how to heal this, so you can better heal others. So a Chiron return, simply put, brings remembrance to the wound in which you heal in others, but not yourself. That is the data side of it. The question is, what should you exactly do with a Chiron return? I'm going to do my best to provide some insight into this and some recommendation, but I will note I am 21. I have not had my Chiron return, and I'm got at least 30 years before I have my Chiron return, and I have a Saturn return that I need to have before that. So my advice will not be as insightful as maybe others. Maybe asking someone who has had their Chiron return or an astrologer who has had their Chiron return could help as well. Overall, given that Chiron is the wounded healer, it represents wounds that we have and wounds around unworthiness specifically. I'd recommend for a Chiron return very similarly what I would recommend for generally healing Chiron, which is first and foremost, learning about the sign and house it's in and asking yourself where these wounds get triggered. Where and how do these wounds show up for you? If your Chiron's in Capricorn, where do you feel wounds around success and recognition? If your Chiron's in Aries, where or how do you have your wounds triggered around independence and individuality and assertion? If your Chiron's in Pisces, where and how do you experience wounds around compassion and empathy? Observing and trying to identify where these wounds get triggered is the first step, per usual, for any placement we have in our chart that we want to heal or work through. Secondly, with that, I would say, as I usually do for Chiron, that sometimes the best way to heal ourselves is by healing others. It's almost like the idea that everyone's a mirror, and sometimes that insight that we need is hard to give to ourselves, but the second we give it to others, then we can remember and realize what we need to hear. So with that, maybe looking about the world during your Chiron return and asking yourself, how does everyone else experience this wound? If your Chiron's in Aries, where do I see wounds of individuality, independence, and assertion? If your Chiron is in Taurus, where do I see wounds around comfort, indulgence, and security? Observing those wounds in the world and becoming a listening ear and trying to be a healer in that, whether that is providing advice for someone or donating, if that's what feels right to you. Trying to encourage this energy in others. Ask yourself, how can I heal this energy in others that can help with a Chiron return? Oop, kicked my camera there. And finally, with that, the last thing I'd say is taking action in alignment. I would guess that with a Chiron return, because this is a major turning point, because the universe is encouraging you to work through this wound, the universe is going to present you more situations that challenge you to heal this wound. It's going to feel like the pain is more prominent. And so asking yourself, how can I work through this pain? How can I heal myself by healing this wound? Which means, how do we heal a Chiron wound? We encourage the energy in ourselves. We encourage the positive traits of the sign our Chiron is in. We work towards implementing it in the positive way. We define the relationship we want to have with the archetype our Chiron is in. I know for me, my idea of a Chiron return for me, with it being in Capricorn, is going to be the idea of, how do I want to define the Capricorn archetype in my life? What do I want to define as success? How do I want the collective to define Capricorn archetype? Really, a Chiron return does play into this idea of, you're here to heal a wound in the collective, not even just in individuals, not just in yourself. You are one of the many who are going to redefine this archetype, but you have to first experience the woundedness around it. You have to understand your own pain so that you can heal the pain in others, and vice versa. Maybe seeing the pain in others can help you heal the pain around this archetype within yourself. So as a summary, if you're experiencing a Chiron return, really diving deep to understand your placement of Chiron and looking at the invitations the universe is giving you to work through this energy, and maybe using others as a backboard to understand what it is you need to heal in yourself, and defining the archetype to see how you envision this being embraced in the collective. Overall, a Chiron return can feel like it brings up a lot of wounds. It feels like painkillers, once again, are wearing off, but it's wearing off for the sake of reminding you that this is something that needs to be healed within you. So hopefully this gives you guys a pretty good idea on how a Chiron return affects you, why it's so impactful. Let me know in the comments below if this video helped you. I've had, like I said, a lot of clients who are recently been working with me who have synchronistically all been having their Chiron return, Chiron in Aries. How are you guys doing right now with this Chiron return that has been activated for you? Chiron and Taurus, you guys are next in this cycle. Let me know what other questions you have. Let me know what I missed. If you have had your Chiron return, share what your experience has been down in the comments below, because I'm sure there are other people out there who feel like their life is a train wreck from Chiron return. So share your wisdom that you know, share your advice down in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and stay tuned for more videos breaking down the stars and more. Thank you guys so much for watching. Once again, my name is Isabel, and from my heart to yours, namaste.